Okay, in this video I'm going to create Windows Server 8 Hyper-V Beta virtual machine. So let's get started. I made a group here, resource. Maybe not the best idea, but I wanted it to be clear and kind of segregate my folders for this video here. So if I right-click on that resource group or right-click on ESXi, it doesn't really matter. I can do New Virtual Machine. We're going to do Custom. Click Next. I've only rehearsed this kind of, sort of, once, a couple hours ago, hastily, so this should work, but I might have to do some tweaks to get it to work. First thing I do is I make a template, so I'm going to call it Windows Server 8 Hyper-V. That's how I've been naming my templates. A friendly name that is what it's going to lay down on the file system, and we're kind of stuck with it, and that's fine. So this is destined to become a template. Click Next, put in the Hyper-V folder, Next, Next, Next. We leave that alone for now. Why? Well, if you look around, you don't see Windows 8 anywhere there, but stay with me, that's coming soon. You'll see it on a screen later here. I'm going to give it 2 cores. And actually, let's see. Yeah, I'll go with 4 to start. Leave the default NIC alone. Leave that alone. Create new. I'm going to give it my usual 750 gig data store that's thin provisioned. My usual because it's a weird number and it stands out as a thin provisioned disk. That's always the number I use. So I can kind of remember what's what versus physical disks, which are usually 1 or 2 terabytes in size. Leave that alone and click Finish. I don't want to click Edit. Let me explain why. If we click Finish, we now have our virtual machine. We can go and tweak the properties. And now, a couple things to point out. On this tab, the operating system list has now grown. Watch it up as we scroll to the top. There's Windows 8. Next thing to point out, this setting. It appears it works without it, although I haven't tried nested VMs, so I may have to revisit that later. So all we've changed is one thing, Windows 8 Server 64-bit. Now, we do need to mount the DVD to install this thing. So we're going to connect the power on, browse our way to the data store. In my case, I moved it to the same RAID array we're going to be installing the operating system on, Hyper-V. And the name is right there, 2 gig. It's a little bit smaller than your normal 3 gig install of the full server. Okay. Now watch what happens here. If we go back to the Options tab, Windows 8 Server, okay, it's still there. Click OK. All right, so there's a tweak needed to a config file here. So I'm going to run Veeam. Log into the ESXi server. Just manually go into that data store. Sort by name. Should jump right out at us. Hyper-V template sounds right. So we want the VMX file. Right-click, Edit. I have the virtual machine powered off. And my mouse cursor is blinking right at the end, so I'm going to paste from my clipboard that one sentence. Hit Enter. And close it. So now my VMX has been tweaked. 5 hours ahead of me, so it's always in GMT time, I believe. It's actually 11:30 p.m. Eastern local time here. we're done with Veeam. We can minimize that and go ahead and power up the virtual machine. Now that we've made that tweak, the install should go without incident. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video from real time, starting right now. Actually, no, sorry. There's two questions that asked me first. Then I'll go ahead and speed it up. Question 1, question 2. And a few seconds later, a little bit more clicking. Custom. Next. Okay. Speeding up 10 times real time, starting now. Okay, we're back in real time now. And it tells me administrator password must be changed. So there we have it. That's the installation process. Before I do anything, or before I do much of anything, I'm going to take a moment to make a template out of this, and then we'll start messing around with Hyper-V. So I won't need to ever install it again. So I'm going to exit, 13, shut down the server, say yes, bring it down. Okay, it's down. Next, we go back here and look. We want to be careful. We made this thing called the template, but we haven't yet right-clicked it and actually converted it to a template. All right, so now it's a template. Go to Hosts and Clusters, VM and Templates. Digging through, the word template jumps out at me. Can deploy to a new virtual machine. Give it a good name, like that's my host name, and then what it actually is called. Windows Server 8 Hyper-V is what it's actually called, and the host name is Hyper-V. Go back to Hosts and Clusters, and now this virtual machine, when it's done cloning, copying from the template, it'll boot up. Now I have a couple things to point out here. Once we get this up, let me show you something here. We're going to need this to run Hyper-V, and that only runs on Windows 8. Okay. So here comes our, sorry, a little confusing, but anyhow, remote server administration tools for Windows 8. We've got to download and we're going to have to install that in the virtual machine. So this thing's already done cloning. That's incredibly fast. Let's go ahead and open a console to it. So it took all of wow, under a minute to deploy from the template. Okay, Control-Delete to sign in. So I hit Control-Insert. And I go to the command line. Okay, there's the system information. At this point, I just want something that works reasonably, and I don't necessarily need to have worries about trying to deal with tools in Hyper-V right now, so I'm not going to worry about that. Because I can't. And it's not important. As long as I can ping this thing, I'm good. So let's start with the basics. Looking at the top, workgroup, fine. Computer name, I'm going to go ahead and give it a better name. Okay, add local administrator. Figure remote management. My Windows 8 machine, let me go ahead and add a local administrator. And that's admin is the account that's on my Windows 8 template that we're about to use. Okay, next. Configure remote management. Enabled. Windows Update Manual, download updates, remote desktop. Okay. So we don't have tools, so it could be really handy to say yes to remote desktop. And allow any version, just a lab. So now my mouse will be smooth, not that you really need a mouse much for this. Okay, network settings. Gonna hit enter. So now I know the IP address is 131. Date and time. Go ahead and change my time zone appropriately. And finally, Windows Update. I'm going to manually bring those down now, or download those now. Shouldn't take very long. No reboot even needed on that one. Okay. All right, next, restart server. We're going to need a client to get in, and we'll also set up terminal services. Let's do that. I don't actually have DNS going, so I'm going to go ahead and whoops. There's my rehearsal earlier. Okay, so Hyper-V is that. I made a DHCP reservation, although it'll always be 131. Apparently I got the IP address wrong. Let's take a look. What's going on here? Never mind, I just remembered what the problem is. It doesn't respond to ping by default. That's fine. And we can fix that. But it's not really important. Let's just go for it. So I'm logging into that secondary account I had created. And it's working great. I now have another administrator. I'm logged in. So we can close this console. And I'm rather comfortable to move forward with the client now. So we know remote desktop works. We know we're fine here. If we look at host name, it's right there, Hyper-V. So we're all set. And the IP address stayed the same through the reboot, of course. Okay, so we can minimize that. Now, I mentioned we need Windows 8. So this virtual machine was just created from a template minutes ago, right before I record this video. Let's move it up to this little Hyper-V group I've created here. And let's boot it up. What are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to install this Remote Server Administration Tools for Windows 8. I'm going to go ahead and run this. This is the only way that we can administer Hyper-V. I tried the other ones, it's version 6.1 on a Windows 7 machine. It won't connect. You get an error. I have no idea why that's downloading slowly. It's only 38 meg. Okay. I'll go ahead and speed up this portion of the video here. Okay, I've resumed recording. It just finished the download. And now it's trying to get my attention. Just see what, okay. Do I want to install? Yes. Okay, finished. We go to Programs, and we go to Turn Windows Features on and off. Now we're talking. Hyper-V is right there. Open it up. You You don't really have much choice. There's only one checkbox that's relevant to click on. Nice. Now we can hit Windows, start typing in Hyper, and we got Hyper-V Manager. Not quite yet ready to connect. I want to get to the command line here, so let's see, right-click again, run as administrator. Yes. So now we'll be able to add by name. So Hyper-V Manager, right-click, connect to server, type in Hyper-V, and with any luck we should get somewhere. I suppose we could use the big connect to server button in the upper right. Sorry about that. Got a little right-click happy. Seems to be taking kind of long. I'm going to pin that to the taskbar so I don't have to have that disappear on me all the time. Right-click, run as administrator. Yes. Okay. Hyper-V Manager. Connect to server. I did see that error when I tested things earlier, yet it works. So I'm not sure what's up with that. It's not liking my fake DNS or something. I do not know. Let's look at settings. So there's our Hyper-V settings. Okay, so there is no virtual switch yet. Let me go back to that. And virtual SAN. Let's see. Virtual disk. So that's if we're trying to locate an existing virtual disk. And if we want to create just a naked drive. Okay, so we're having some sort of communication problems. So let me go back and remove the server. It's gone. And let's try adding by IP. It's not liking that much either. Kind of strange. Configure remote management failure. Let's turn on response to ping. That'll make life a little easier. Yes. And how about enable remote management again? So not sure what happened there, but after a reboot somewhere along the line, we got that turned off. I want to make sure we're good to go, so after a restart, I want to see that it's healthy and happy. I admit I haven't really, I'm no expert on Hyper-V, so I have not broken open a manual or researched this really at all. I just did a quick test right before recording the video, seeing that at least I can get Hyper-V running under ESXi. As far as configuring, you're seeing me kind of learn on the fly here a bit. So bear with me. We'll probably be fine very soon here. So that's an administrator account. I think I'm going to need configure remote management failure. Huh. Okay. Enable remote management. See if I can bring it up manually after every reboot. Go back to the main menu. Remote management's enabled. Okay. Now what about credentials? Well, this Windows 8 machine is logged in as admin. Hyper-V is administrator. Let's remove the machine again and try again. Yeah, it's not so good. So let's see what the server's doing. Is it still showing enabled? Yes, it is. Okay, it seems this is a pretty well documented issue. Going back some months or over a year. So let's see if this fixes it. Component Services Manager. Sorry. Where's Component Service Manager? Let me see if I can search for that. Nope. That'd be too easy. Okay, so there it is. The fix resides in here. And I want to go to Computers, My Computer. Right-click on My Computer and say Properties. Go to COM Security tab. Under Access Permissions, Edit Limits. Under Anonymous Login, select Allow for Remote Access. And then it says Relaunch Hyper-V. Okay, Relaunch Hyper-V. It's not complaining. All right, it's fixed. Wow.